My name is Lois Martinez, 27 years old. I worked in project management for a mid-sized company in Ohio, owned a small house, and drove a paid-off Silverado I had bought used a few years earlier. My weekends were usually spent restoring a 1987 Camaro I found on Craigslist. Some people thought my life sounded predictable. I thought it sounded peaceful. After a string of relationships with men who confused immaturity with freedom, I had stopped chasing excitement and started appreciating stability. Then, in the summer of 2021, I met Andrew. We met at my friend Jake's backyard barbecue. Andrew was an elementary school art teacher who somehow managed to make everyone around him smile. We spent nearly 3 hours talking about everything from classic cars to terrible first dates. Instead of teasing me for loving schedules and planning ahead, he admired it. He said it was refreshing to meet someone who actually knew what they wanted. I left that barbecue thinking he was different, and for a long time, I believed I was right. The first year together felt effortless. Andrew loved that I remembered little things. I knew how he took his coffee, which sketchbook he preferred, and which restaurant he always talked about trying. He liked that I planned weekend trips instead of wasting Saturdays deciding what to do. We talked about moving in together. He joked about needing space in my garage for his art supplies. And one afternoon, while we were sanding rust off my Camaro, he smiled and said, "Our kids are going to grow up thinking engine grease is a normal smell." His parents welcomed me even faster than he had. Steve, his retired firefighter father, treated me like a favorite apprentice. Every Sunday we'd disappear into his immaculate garage to work on his old Corvette, while Andrew sketched nearby or wandered in with coffee. Steve taught me everything from rebuilding carburetors to adjusting valves, always insisting that patience solved more problems than expensive tools. Grace was just as wonderful. She had a huge vegetable garden behind the house and loved showing me every new tomato or pepper she managed to grow. She constantly packed leftovers for me, asked about my work, and even trusted me to help redesign her greenhouse because she thought my project management skills could organize anything. Before long, she was calling me sweetheart, and somehow it felt completely natural. Both of them constantly teased Andrew about marriage. "Don't let this one get away," Steve would joke. Grace would simply smile at me and say, "He's lucky to have you." By October 2022, I had already made my decision. I was going to propose. People always seemed surprised when they heard a woman wanted to propose, but I didn't care. Andrew had talked about our future enough times that I thought the question itself was only a formality. I bought a $7,500 engagement ring and hid it inside an old watch box beneath my socks. Christmas dinner at Steve and Grace's house would be perfect. Both families would be there. I'd wait until dessert, ask the question, and hopefully begin the next chapter of our lives. Once I committed to the idea, I planned everything. I reserved our favorite steakhouse for Christmas Eve. I hunted down 4 rare china pieces Grace had mentioned wanting months earlier. I found a first-edition firefighting history book Steve had casually talked about over dinner. For Andrew, I bought the professional art supply set he'd been admiring online, but refused to buy for himself because he said teachers couldn't justify spending that much money. Every gift had a reason. Every detail had meaning. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed the first warning signs sooner. Early in December, I proudly showed Andrew the antique china pieces spread across my dining table. "Your mom is going to love these," I said. He barely looked up from his phone. "Yeah, they're nice." That was it. No excitement, no smile, nothing. I convinced myself he was simply exhausted. December was always chaotic for teachers, with holiday concerts, parent meetings, and children counting down every minute until Christmas vacation. Then another change happened. Andrew started talking about Jenna. At first, she was simply an old college friend who had recently moved back to Ohio. Then she became part of every conversation. "Jenna thinks artists should travel more. Jenna says people get stuck in small towns." Jenna believes life should be spontaneous. Eventually, I noticed he was checking his phone almost constantly. During dinner, during movies, even while sitting beside me in the garage. When I asked what was going on, he'd simply answer, "Nothing." On December 15th, I asked if we should confirm Christmas dinner with his parents. He shrugged. "Maybe we should keep things flexible this year." I frowned. Flexible? I don't know. Less planned. That answer stayed with me. It didn't sound like Andrew. It sounded like someone else's opinion coming out of his mouth. 7 days later, on December 22nd, I was sitting in my living room wrapping the final Christmas presents. Everything was neatly organized. Steve's gifts, Grace's gifts, Andrew's gift, the engagement ring hidden safely upstairs. Then Andrew walked through my front door, wearing an expression I'd never seen before. "We need to talk." My stomach tightened immediately. I set down the ribbon. "What's wrong?" He sat across from me but didn't reach for my hand. "I'm bringing Jenna to Christmas dinner instead of you." For several seconds, I honestly thought I'd misheard him. "What?" "I know this is terrible timing." "You think?" He rubbed both hands together nervously. "Things between us have started feeling too structured." I stared at him. What does that even mean? It feels like our whole future has already been planned. And? With Jenna, he hesitated. Everything feels natural. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're replacing me 3 days before Christmas?" He nodded without meeting my eyes. Then he delivered the sentence that hurt even more. "I found the ring." Every muscle in my body froze. "You went through my drawer?" "I was looking for a charger." "In my sock drawer?" He ignored the question. "Lois, I'm only 25. I'm not ready for marriage." "You've been talking about marriage for over a year." "I thought I was." He swallowed hard. "But when I saw the ring, I panicked." I couldn't even speak. He continued anyway. "I'm actually doing you a favor." I laughed once, a cold, humorless laugh. "A favor?" Can you imagine how embarrassing it would have been if you'd proposed in front of everyone and I'd said no? I looked at the man I'd spent months planning a future with. "You really believe this conversation is protecting me?" "I'm trying not to hurt you." "No." I stood up. "You're trying not to feel guilty." Silence filled the room. Without another word, I gathered every carefully wrapped gift I'd bought for Steve and Grace and placed them in front of him. "Give these to your parents." He watched me in confusion. "They shouldn't lose Christmas because of your decision." Then I walked into my bedroom, grabbed the overnight bag he always kept at my house, and carried it back to the living room. When I opened the front door, he looked completely stunned. "Lois? Take your bag." I never wanted this to happen. But it did. His eyes filled with tears. "Can we still be friends?" I shook my head slowly. "You don't get to replace me and then ask me to help you feel better about it." He stood there for another moment, hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. Eventually, he picked up his bag, gathered the Christmas presents, and quietly walked out the door. The house became painfully silent. I sat on my living room floor, staring at the half-wrapped gifts for nearly 10 minutes before reaching for my phone. I called my best friend, Lydia. The moment she answered, I said only one sentence: "I need to get out of here." Less than 30 minutes later, I was sitting on her couch with an overnight bag while she handed me a cup of coffee. After listening to everything, she leaned back and sighed. So, he traded the woman who planned an entire future around him for the ex-girlfriend who just wandered back into town? Apparently. She shook her head. One day he's going to realize exactly what he threw away. I looked down at my untouched coffee. For the first time since meeting Andrew, I wasn't thinking about changing his mind. I was wondering why I'd ever believed love alone could keep someone from walking away. Christmas morning felt strangely quiet. Instead of getting dressed for dinner at Steve and Grace's house, with an engagement ring hidden in my purse, I sat on Lydia's balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching fresh snow settle across the neighborhood. The silence hurt, but it was different from the pain I felt the night before. I wasn't waiting for Andrew to change his mind anymore. I already knew he wouldn't. Lydia handed me a mug of coffee and sat beside me. "You okay?" "No." "Good," she said honestly. "I'd be worried if you were." Around noon, my phone buzzed. "Andrew. Mom keeps asking where you are. I don't know what to tell her." I read the message twice before locking my screen. Whatever he told his parents was no longer my responsibility. 10 minutes later, another text appeared. "Jenna doesn't really understand our Christmas traditions." I almost laughed. 3 days earlier, he had told me Jenna made him feel alive because she lived in the moment. Apparently, living in the moment didn't include knowing when presents were opened or why Steve insisted everyone stay at the table until dessert. I ignored the message. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Steve. I hesitated before answering. "Hi, Steve." His voice sounded heavier than I had ever heard it. "Lois, Grace and I just found out what happened." Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he sighed. "I owe you an apology." "You didn't do anything." "My son did." Those 4 words nearly broke me. Grace took the phone. "Honey, we opened your gifts." I closed my eyes. "The china." Her voice trembled. "I mentioned that pattern once." I remembered. "I know." She started crying. "I can't believe you spent all that time looking for those pieces." Steve laughed quietly. "And that firefighting book. I've wanted that edition for years." "I'm glad you liked it." "Liked it?" he snorted. "I almost forgot it was Christmas." We all laughed softly. For a few moments, everything felt almost normal again. Then Steve became serious. "I won't lie to you." "What happened?" "Christmas dinner was a disaster." I already knew the answer before he continued. "Jenna." Grace sighed loudly. "She criticized my cooking before she'd even finished eating." Steve added, "Then she explained why classic cars are bad for society." I smiled despite myself. "She actually said that?" "Oh, sweetheart," Steve chuckled. "She spent 15 minutes explaining why my Corvette represented outdated values." Grace interrupted. "And when I served turkey, she asked whether we'd ever considered replacing it with tofu." Even through my heartbreak, I couldn't stop laughing. Steve's tone softened. "You should have been here." Grace agreed immediately. "You belong here." The words caught me completely off guard. Steve continued. "We're disappointed in Andrew. He threw away something special." "And for what?" Grace whispered. "A woman who spent Christmas complaining about everything." Before hanging up, Steve said something I never forgot. "If you ever need us, you're still family." When the call ended, I cried harder than I had since Andrew walked out. Not because I wanted him back, because I realized I had lost 2 people who had genuinely loved me. That evening, Andrew texted again. "I think I made a mistake." Another message followed seconds later. "Can we please talk after the holidays?" I typed several responses, deleted every one, then switched my phone to airplane mode. For once, I refused to carry someone else's guilt. 2 weeks passed before he found another way to contact me. An unfamiliar number appeared on my phone late one Tuesday night. "Hello?" Silence. Then Andrew spoke. "Lois." He sounded exhausted. "I just wanted to tell you." He stopped. "Jenna left." I leaned against my kitchen counter. I'm sorry. No, you're not. No, he laughed bitterly. She said she never wanted anything serious. She was always going back to Chicago. I thought she'd changed her mind. I remembered every conversation where he'd praised Jenna for living without plans. Apparently, her lack of plans included him. I threw away everything. Yes. I lost you. Yes. My parents barely speak to me. I wasn't surprised. Steve had always believed people should accept responsibility for their choices. Andrew had chosen. Now he had to live with it. I've replayed that conversation at your house 1,000 times. So have I. If I could take it back. You can't. His breathing became uneven. I miss you. No. I do. No. You miss the future you walked away from. Silence answered me. Finally, he whispered, Can we meet? No. Please. I don't hate you, Andrew. You don't? No. But I can't trust you anymore. That hurt him more than anything else I had said. I understand. I hope you do. I ended the call. Then blocked the number. Over the following month, his friends began contacting me. Jessica called first. Andrew isn't sleeping. I'm sorry. He cries every day. I hope therapy helps. He really loves you. I answered gently. If he had, he wouldn't have replaced me. Madison tried next. People deserve second chances. I agree. So give him one. I already gave him hundreds. Every day I trusted him. Every holiday I planned around him. Every promise I believed. Those had all been chances. He simply hadn't realized they were. Instead of looking backward, I finally focused on myself. Work became my escape. The organizational skills Andrew once called controlling earned me a promotion managing larger commercial projects. My supervisor praised my ability to anticipate problems before they happened. Apparently, planning ahead wasn't a flaw outside my relationship. I also enrolled in weekend photography classes. The instructor encouraged us to photograph things that meant something to us. I started documenting my Camaro restoration. Old metal slowly becoming beautiful again somehow mirrored my own life. Lydia eventually convinced me to join a local hiking group. Fresh air, she insisted, and maybe you'll meet someone who actually appreciates calendars. I laughed. I highly doubt that. She was wrong. That's where I met Daniel Carter. He was a physical therapist who loved woodworking, hiking, and restoring old furniture. He wasn't loud. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply kind. Our first conversation lasted nearly 3 hours. On our third date, I apologized for sending him a detailed itinerary for a weekend road trip. Instead of teasing me, he smiled. I love that. You do? It tells me you care. He reached across the table. You remember little things. It makes people feel important. I stared at him. Andrew had once called those exact qualities suffocating. Daniel called them thoughtful. For the first time since Christmas, I realized something important. The way I loved had never been the problem. I had simply been giving it to someone who didn't know its value. By the following Christmas, my life looked completely different. The woman who had cried on Lydia's couch a year earlier barely existed anymore. Work was going well, my Camaro restoration was almost finished, and Daniel had quietly become the safest place in my life. Nothing about our relationship felt rushed, yet everything felt certain. We never argued about planning because he actually enjoyed making plans with me. He liked that I remembered birthdays without Facebook reminders, booked restaurants before they were full, and somehow always knew exactly what gifts would make people smile. One evening, while we decorated my Christmas tree, Daniel held up 2 boxes of ornaments. Silver or gold? Gold, I answered automatically. He laughed. I knew you'd say that. You did? You always choose warm colors for Christmas. I looked at him. You noticed? I notice everything about you. That simple sentence healed something Andrew had broken. The qualities my ex-boyfriend once called controlling were the same qualities Daniel quietly admired every day. A week before Christmas, Jake announced his annual holiday party. Daniel looked at the invitation before asking, "Do you think Andrew will be there?" "Probably. Do you still want to go?" I didn't even hesitate. I'm done avoiding places because of someone else's decisions. The party was already crowded when we arrived. Christmas music filled the house, people laughed around the kitchen island, and someone had already started a competitive game of charades in the living room. For almost an hour, everything felt normal. Then I saw him. Andrew stood alone near the drinks table, staring into a paper cup. He looked older than 26. Not physically, emotionally. When our eyes met, he froze. Daniel quietly asked, "Are you okay?" I smiled. I am. Unfortunately, Andrew wasn't willing to leave the past where it belonged. A few minutes later, he approached us. "Lois?" I turned calmly. "Hi, Andrew. You look really good." "Thank you." His eyes shifted toward Daniel. "So, this is him." Daniel smiled politely and offered his hand. "I'm Daniel." Andrew shook it for barely a second before looking back at me. "I've been hoping I'd see you." I figured. I wanted to apologize again. "You already did." "I know. But I never really explained." I folded my arms. "Go ahead." He took a deep breath. When Jenna came back, she made everything seem exciting. I know. I convinced myself that planning meant giving up my freedom. And now? He laughed bitterly. Now I know freedom isn't worth much when you're completely alone. I felt sorry for him, but pity wasn't love. "My parents still talk about you," he continued. "I still send them Christmas cards." "I know. My mom keeps saying no one has ever remembered her the way you did." Steve and Grace had never hidden how disappointed they were in their son's choices. According to mutual friends, family dinners had become awkward ever since that Christmas. Andrew looked down at the floor. "They compare every woman I date to you." I sighed. "That's unfair to everyone." "It's true." He looked back up. "I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me." Before I could answer, Daniel gently rested his hand against my back. Andrew noticed immediately. His expression hardened. "So you've really replaced me?" Daniel answered before I could. "No one replaced anyone." Andrew ignored him. "I made one mistake." I shook my head. "No." "You made a decision." "I was scared." "We all get scared." "You don't destroy someone because you're scared." People nearby had started listening. Andrew lowered his voice. "I've spent every day wishing I could go back." "You can't." "I know." His eyes filled with tears. "I still love you." I answered quietly. "No." His face fell. "You love the future you lost. I love you." If that were true, I held his gaze. "You would have chosen me when you had the chance." Silence settled between us. Daniel squeezed my hand. "We should probably go." I nodded. As we turned toward the door, Andrew suddenly raised his voice. "She's just your rebound!" The entire room went silent. Jake stopped talking mid-sentence. Several people looked in our direction. Daniel slowly turned back. "No. I'm the man lucky enough to meet her after you failed to appreciate her." Andrew pointed at him. "You don't even know her." Daniel smiled. "I know she remembers everyone's favorite meal." I know she plans vacations months in advance. I know she notices when people are having a bad day before they say a word. I know she makes ordinary moments feel important. Then he looked directly at Andrew. And I know those aren't flaws. Andrew's composure completely collapsed. You stole my future! Daniel didn't even raise his voice. I didn't steal anything. You handed it away. I stepped forward one last time. Andrew. He looked at me hopefully. I genuinely hope you find peace. But it won't be with me. Daniel and I walked out together. Behind us, I heard Andrew calling my name. I never turned around. I honestly believed that would be our final encounter. Instead, it became the beginning of something much worse. A month later, Daniel received an anonymous Instagram message. Enjoy her while you can. Then another account commented beneath one of our hiking photos. She's pretending she's over him. Within days, several fake profiles began following both of us. Some sent passive-aggressive messages. Others simply watched every story we posted. Daniel handed me his phone. I think we know who's behind these. I nodded. Unfortunately, it didn't stop online. A few weeks later, security at my office called. Ms. Martinez? Yes? There's a man sitting in a pickup truck across the street. My stomach tightened. Is he bothering anyone? Not yet. But he's been here almost 3 hours. When security asked him to leave, it was Andrew. The same thing happened twice more over the next month. Then flowers appeared on our porch. White roses. No signature, just handwritten notes. Some love deserves another chance. You were always supposed to be mine. Daniel looked at the flowers before quietly throwing them into the trash. We're documenting everything. We saved every message, every photo, every security report, and every witness statement. Eventually, we met with an attorney. A judge granted a protective order requiring Andrew to stay away from both of us, our home, and my workplace. For several weeks, everything became quiet again. Then one snowy Friday night, just before midnight, violent pounding echoed through our house. Lois! Daniel checked the security camera. It's Andrew. He was standing on our front porch, obviously drunk. You belong with me. Come outside. I know you're in there. Daniel called the police while I began recording from inside the house. Andrew continued shouting. He's not better than me. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Within minutes, flashing blue lights filled the street. The officers found Andrew sitting on our front steps, crying. When they informed him he was under arrest for violating the protective order, he didn't resist. As they led him toward the patrol car, he looked back at me one final time. I just wanted another chance, I answered softly through the doorway. You already had one. The police car disappeared into the snowy night. That was the last time I ever saw Andrew. Months later, Daniel proposed during a quiet hiking trip overlooking a small lake just after sunrise. There were no crowds, no speeches, no audience. Just one question. Will you marry me? I smiled before he even finished asking. Yes. Steve and Grace still send me Christmas cards every year. Sometimes we meet for lunch. They've apologized more times than they ever needed to. I've reminded them just as many times that none of what happened was their fault. Next summer, Daniel and I will be married. Jake is already planning an embarrassing wedding toast. Lydia insists she'll cry before I walk down the aisle. As for me, I'll probably still overplan every holiday for the rest of my life. Only now, I'll be planning them with someone who never mistakes thoughtfulness for control. Andrew believed my love was something that trapped him. Daniel showed me it was something worth protecting. And in the end, that became the greatest gift life ever gave me.